Ohio State making the case that they are the #1 contender for the #1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs. Buckeyes continuing to embarrass opponents, this time poor Michigan State. That could have been 100-0 if Ohio State wanted it to be. Buckeyes now have the Heisman favorite in C.J. Stroud, and they could jump to #2 in Tuesday night's playoff rankings. Dennis Dodd's power rankings, perhaps foreshadowing that a bit. He's got the Buckeyes jumping up to #2 and jumping Bama for that #2 spot. We also saw in the AP poll, the coaches poll still has Alabama as the #2 team, just ahead of Ohio State. All right, let's get Dennis Dodd in here and let's talk Ohio State. Do you think they're going to jump Bama in the playoff rankings Tuesday night? And what would the significance of that be heading into the Michigan game this Saturday?
Yeah, I do think they're going to jump Alabama, and I'll give you the reasons first. But first, I don't know if it has that much significance. I mean, the top 4 or 5 are going to play. The only drama Tuesday night is going to be whether Cincinnati or Michigan or 4 or 5, and then that's going to rectify itself because Ohio State's playing Michigan. But back to the task at hand. Yes, Ohio State in a top 7 game, that was, 2 top 7 ranked teams, posted the largest victory margin in such a game in the AP poll since 1945. Army beat Penn 61-0. Obviously, the victory margin Saturday was 49 points. It was a complete dismantling of a team that had playoff aspirations. Don't forget, that was a playoff elimination game. And if we're going to compare, yes, Alabama played a ranked team in Alabama, but they struggled with Arkansas. They only beat them by 7 points. That's why I wrote about Saturday, that now we finally have a team emerging that I think has the skill, athleticism, and speed to go after Georgia. I don't know if they beat them, but it's not going to be 37-0 like it was with Arkansas or something like that. I think it'd be a hell of a game, and that's still with the knowledge that Alabama is going to be quite a hurdle in the SEC championship game. But we were waiting in a season where nobody except one team, Georgia, had really shown out. Excellent. Ohio State, that team now, they're playing at the top of their game.
And they now have the second best odds to win the college football playoff. Alabama's in a tough position because to win it, they're probably going to have to beat Georgia 2 different times, one in the SEC championship game and one potentially in the playoffs. Now, it's also a battle between Ohio State and Alabama in the Heisman race because C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young are head-to-head right now as the 2 overwhelming favorites. C.J. Stroud with better odds to become the Heisman Trophy winner because of that dismantling of Michigan State this past weekend. Both are going to have showcases. C.J. Stroud's got the Michigan game this week. Bryce Young's going to have the Georgia game in the SEC Championship. How do you see it shaking out?
Yeah, this one's a little bit more defined. Early Saturday and that noon start, C.J. Stroud had 6 touchdown passes by halftime, tied the school record by halftime, then was taken out shortly thereafter. But then Bryce Young goes for 559 yards, a school record at Alabama, and he has 5 touchdown passes. Their numbers are very, very similar. So it's down to those 2, surprise, surprise, 2 quarterbacks going into rivalry games where the Heisman probably should be decided. And C.J. Stroud has been the most consistent player at Ohio State this season. I suggested that to Ryan Day on Friday when I was in town for the game, and he kind of agreed. The sky was falling in week 2. The defense is not very good. They lose to Oregon. But you know what? C.J. Stroud had 7 touchdown passes in the first 2 games he ever played as a starting quarterback at Ohio State. Now he's got, 36 of them. And Bryce Young is who we thought he would be. He's fantastic. He's got a great arm. He's got much more mobility than Mac Jones. We know that. And they are mirror images of each other. I'd love to see this game in the playoff. I'd love to see Georgia, Ohio State. And it looks like the way things are shaking out, we're going to see those games.
Question is, are we going to see Cincinnati in there if they go undefeated? Now, they could find themselves in the top 4 tomorrow night. Do the Bearcats have a spot, in your opinion, in the playoff if they take care of their business, regardless of everything else that happens? If they beat ECU and then beat a likely ranked Houston team in the AAC championship game, are they in?
Yeah, let's put it this way. A group of 5 team has never been this close, on the precipice, where they can start planning for a playoff spot. It's realistic now. You start with Georgia. If Georgia beats Georgia Tech, which we all expect to happen, There's no way they can miss the playoff. They can lose to Alabama. They can beat Alabama. They're going to remain one of the top 4 teams in the country. So then it comes down to what? Probably a Big Ten team, Ohio State or Michigan with 1 loss. If that happens, they're going to take up a spot. All right, that's the worst case scenario for Cincinnati unless Alabama wins. So then, Chris, you've got 2 spots. Who are you going to give them to? Here's Cincinnati's competition. Cincinnati at 13-0 American champions, 11-1 Notre Dame that doesn't play a 13th game that was beaten on its home field by Cincinnati. A 1-loss Big 12 champion, if it gets that far. I'm not even sure if it gets that far between Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. Don't forget, Cincinnati would be the undefeated champion and would have to beat out a Big 12 team. I think in that scenario, I think they're in. I think Cincinnati, as long as they beat East Carolina, then obviously Houston in the American Championship game, they're going to be in a Group of 5 team in for the first time.
Amanda wants to know if Oklahoma or Oklahoma State still have a shot to get in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they do. I just mentioned it. If Cincinnati wins its games, then the competition is going to be, a Big 12 1-loss champion. I talked to Jerry Palm this morning, our guru in such things, and he thinks Cincinnati's going to win out over that. So those two, the Big 12 needs help. Let's put it that way. When Oklahoma lost to Baylor, there were no longer any undefeated teams. Oklahoma didn't play particularly well on Saturday. I think Oklahoma State, if anything, for the Big 12, is that conference's best chance. This defense is incredible. Top 5, I think, leading the nation or close to leading the nation in points given up per game. 15 sacks the last 2 games prior to Saturday, 37 sacks on the season. They've been fantastic. So I think that's going to resonate more with the committee if a choice has to be made than frankly, Oklahoma, which has played, I think, at last count, 6 games by a touchdown or less.
Well, we don't know a lot. What we do know is the Pac-12 is once again out. We could have guessed that before the season. They're usually always out. Oregon gets smacked by Utah. Are the Utes the class of the conference? This is 3 out of the last 4 years, I believe, that they're in the Pac-12 championship game.
Yeah, much has to be said about Kyle Whittingham and his 15th or 16th year. In that win over Oregon, he became the school's winningest coach. I think his 142nd win there. And remember, this was Urban Meyer's replacement after Urban Meyer went to Florida. So he's one of the longest tenured coaches now in FBS. And yes, they're sneaky good. 3 out of the last 4 years in the Pac-12 championship game. They're probably going to rematch with Oregon if Oregon can get past Oregon State this week. You know what? They'll probably beat them again the same way they beat them Saturday. With good play calling, very physical play, special teams, they were superior. Britton Covey had that punt return right before halftime, actually at halftime with zeros on the clock to extend the lead. And they're a much better team right now. I dare say that Oregon has more talent given their ranking and recruiting, but Utah plays more of a unit. Cameron Rising, the backup quarterback, he didn't start that way. He was a backup quarterback to start the season, and now he's the guy. So you're going to have to match Utah's physicality before you beat them, and they do look like the class of the league right now.
All that talent with Oregon, with Arizona State, with USC, and it's Utah more often than not coming out on top in that Pac-12. Dennis Dodd joining us here on HQ. You can find his full power rankings, 1 to 25, on CBSSports.com. Clemson back in the rankings at number 25. Cover 3 podcast is where you stay up to date on everything going on in the world of college football. Latest episode focusing on the Gators firing Dan Mullen.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.